All right, Kevin, back with you with another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Elizabeth Purvis. And Elizabeth, it is so awesome to have you here.
It's so great to be here. Thank you so much. It's like we've been circling around for like 2 years or some such. It's like
Yeah,
wonderful to finally get to connect.
So,
Yeah.
I got to tell the story a little bit because, you and I are both big fans of this guy, Travis Sago.
So are
And so,
my favorite Southern gentleman, my favorite offers, buddy.
yep. And I remember seeing a picture of you at this event that he did. It was back in 2019.
Yeah.
And I saw that and it just caused me to take note of you. And like I shared with you before we hit the recording, I've been stalking you ever since. And I'm just like,
Funny.
I just really love this girl Elizabeth, and I love the way she shows up. And it just took me time to just reach out and say, hey, I should interview you for the podcast if you're open to that. And so here we are.
Here we are. It's perfect timing.
Yes. And you know what? I gotta share a little Travis story because back in April or May of 2017, I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine, Tim. And during that conversation, he asked me, he's like, Kevin, he said, all these amazing entrepreneurs. Why have you never held an in-person get together to just get us all in the same room so we can meet each other and stuff? And I'm like, I don't know, Tim. I guess I just never thought of that. And he's like, well, you should give that some thought, because if you did something like that, I would totally want to come to that. And he planted this seed, and it got me thinking. In fact, I couldn't even sleep that night because I'm talking to my wife, Lisa, at dinner that night. And I'm like, honey, we could just hold it right here at the house. And I'd invite these friends of mine, like, man, this would be so cool. And the next morning I get up at like 5 a.m. and I start going through my contacts and I start making the list of like, who would you want to invite, And that morning I also had a conversation on my calendar already scheduled with Travis, because him and I were working on some stuff at the time. And so he was the first guy I ever ran it by. I had absolutely zero clarity on what this was going to be.
Right.
But Travis could tell. He's like, damn, Kev, you're pretty excited about it. So I told him about it. I told him I was talking with Tim. And I was like, yeah, I want to do this. I'm thinking about it. And I explained the best I could. And Travis is like, well, Kev, he's like, are you open to some feedback? And I said, yeah, I absolutely am. And he's like, well, here's the thing. He's like, I'm an hour away from my airport on my end in Arkansas here. You're an hour away from your airport on your end. And with the travel, he's like, so it's a whole day just for me to get to you and another day to get home. And then if you're talking 2.5, 3 days, he's like, so we're talking 5 days. And
that's a lot.
Yeah. And that's what Travis said. He's like, that's a lot. I'm not a fan of traveling. I'm not a fan of leaving my wife. But Kev, you do this, I would totally be there. And I was like, wow. And so Travis was number one person I talked to. And he was the kind of guy that I was wanting to invite. And to have him respond the way he did, I was like, okay, I'm on the right track. And I look back, so that was 6 years ago. We held that very first event right here, right on the other side of this wall in my living room.
So good.
August of 2017. So 6 years ago. 6 years and what? 6 years ago this month, actually.
Holy crap.
And I look at what has transpired since then. And man, it makes my head spin. Like, holy cow, look at everything that transpired from this. And as great as it is to be right here, right now, I'm just like thinking, wow, where are we going to be in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year, 2 years? It's just, it's mind-boggling to think about. But
and it goes to show, and we all know this, right? Like, we know how important relationships are. We have a saying in our business that relationships are everything. Relationships are everything. It's one of my core values. And to be honest, relationships are actually a huge edge for me on the personal growth side, not to go into like patterning and like stuff, right? But like the actual kind of transformation on the inside that I needed to do in order to create what we create has been all about it's been all about relationships and how I have relationships with humans in my life. And so we know intellectually, right? If we're entrepreneurs, we know that getting into a room with people and actually cultivating the relationships is a thing intellectually. But then when you actually do it and you take the time and you go to a room and you sit with people and you connect in the way that you're describing, it's crazy how quickly things move and how how the ripple effect with the ripple effect afterward,
Yeah.
right? Like, as
Yeah.
you were saying, like all the different things that transpired, and
Yeah.
it just feels good. Like we're here as human beings, like we're here to connect with other human beings, you know?
That's right.
So, and Travis is such a beautiful model of that himself. And he's such a magnet for amazing people. And he's such a generous, loving human being. And like, you know, kind of represents, to me, he really represents the best of a lot of the entrepreneurial industry, or the best isn't the right word, but, you know, just the highest level, as we
Yeah.
say in my world, you know, when I use the term highest level, I'm referring to our divine nature, our best self, our highest level self. And Travis really is that to me for this industry, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how cool is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, when there you have somebody in your life like Travis, and the kind of people he attracts and that gravitate towards him, you just, when you know what you know about somebody like Travis, you're just like, well, if anybody around him in his orbit, they're probably pretty dang good people, you know. And so just if they're there and you have that relationship with him, you get the benefit of like, well, that's pre-sorted, pre-screened, and all of that if they're just in his orbit, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
He attracts incredible people. And
yeah,
he's a beautiful model for how to have amazing relationships too. And he used to be in the relationship space
yeah.
back when he was an affiliate marketer. It's like, anyway, I could go on and on.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
so Travis, thank you. If you ever get a chance to listen to this, thank you for the role that you played, because Elizabeth and I wouldn't be talking here today if it weren't for the role that you played in that. And I don't
Yeah.
think you ever realized that
He
until now.
probably
So,
doesn't.
yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
well, what I'd like to do is kind of, start off, Elizabeth, by turning it over to you so we can set a little bit of context so that anybody listening to this kind of has a really good idea of who you are and what makes you tick and what inspires you. So why don't we turn it over to you so that you can share, what you do, who you serve, what
Yeah.
inspires you most to do what you do, all of that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. So, if I'm meeting you for the first time, hello. It is great to share space with you. And I always like when I'm on, podcasts or speaking in any way, I always like to give a little shout out to the listeners for making the time and space to be here now. It's a big deal to sit down and carve out time for a podcast, even if you're walking along on your walk. And listening to a show like this, just you're clearly up to big things. And I just like to give a major shout out to people who are listening. So thank you. It's fantastic to meet you all. My name's Elizabeth Purvis. I have been in this industry for 15 years now. I can't freaking believe that. I officially call myself old guard. And the sort of the basics of what I do. I am a business mentor, and this isn't my what do you do speech or whatever, but I'm just a business mentor to what I call transformational leaders. They're coaches, healers, practitioners, those who are on the woo side of things, I like to say, and those who are really whose mission it is to shift consciousness on the planet. We're in a really interesting place in the world. Consciousness is totally shifting, like zillion miles an hour, where we've experienced all kinds of upheaval. And I work with the folks who are really helping usher in new ways of thinking and really helping people heal and transform in new ways. And I've been doing that for a really long time. And my earliest I guess kind of forays into this was around helping transformational leaders price and package their services. I was one of the very first teachers of the high ticket model. So I
Okay.
learned from some people. There was only like 3 or 4 of us doing it at the time. And I had a course all the way back in 2008 on how to price and package services in the high ticket way, kind of in the way that we do it now. And that evolved into what we do now, which is teach transformational leaders how to scale and grow their businesses. Experienced leaders, I should say. I work now primarily with people who already know how to package their stuff and sell their stuff on the regular. The people who are at, like, our ideal client is around like the 100K,
Okay.
150K mark, right? You've been kind of like, you've gotten this far, sort of throwing stuff against the wall, but now you're ready for the real offers that you can take to 500K or whatever in 20 hours a week. Well, a lot of our leaders like to, and this is something I learned from Travis, a positioning I got from him. A lot of our leaders, they want to spend more time leading and working their magic rather than selling and launching.
Yeah.
So that's what we help them do. We help leaders, do their, like, basically optimize their offer and messaging so they can sell without sales calls, so they can sell without big launches or webinars or any of that stuff. And that's very close to me because I learned from the direct response marketer guys in 2007, right? I was in classes with John Carlton and Dan Kennedy and David Garfinkel. And I remember when Harlan Kilstein came on the scene and was, John Carlton's protege and all that. That was where I cut my teeth. And so I've watched this industry do all kinds of different online marketing things, right? When I got started, you had to run, if you wanted to get to 7 figures, you had to do live events. There was just no other way.
Yeah.
Right. And then Product Launch Formula came on the scene, and Jeff Walker, who is just a dear human being and someone I just love no end, who's been very supportive of me throughout the years. Product Launch Formula was the next way. And then here comes webinars to a sales call. And then here comes like launching in a Facebook group. Like, I have seen and done it all. And what I can tell you is that none of our leaders really want to do any of it. They just want to do their work.
Yeah.
So after doing all of that, major turning point for me came, really like learning with Travis, actually how to sell via email and PDF, and then bringing that to our people. And that's what we do. And it's also what excites me. Like, and I have a whole series of metaphysical teachings too. So I have got the magic-y side. I do a lot of metaphysical teaching that goes along with our work. But I just love helping those who are making the world a better place, and those who are really leading the shift in consciousness and are helping people on the ground. I love to help them get paid incredibly well and then be able to just sign up clients without a lot of hoo-ha.
Yeah. Man.
Yeah. So
What an amazing offer, because I can see that. I mean, I remember when that's how it was for me. Because I love the serving part,
Right.
I love doing that. And
me too.
And to get to a place where the sales piece of it isn't where we don't have to be so dang strategic about the whole thing. And where it can just be this natural part of just who we are and how we show up. And that becomes too this amazing interaction with people, regardless of whether they invest in what we're offering or not. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It blows my mind, how much we can really do on the sales front, and do it very well simply by connecting with in very simple ways over email and messenger.
Yeah.
And how, like, and I love all the tactics. I've done them all. I used to teach, one of the reasons why I do what I do now is because I used to teach PLF, and I used to teach webinars, and I used to teach sales conversations, which everyone needs to know how to do. Like, nobody gets out to learn how to do sales conversations, right? But I used to teach all that stuff. And I would just watch my clients be like, I just want to friggin' like coach my writers and help. I'm going to sit around and do, re-imprinting sessions for 2 hours, like a few times a week. Like, that's all,
Yeah.
And I would just see how these tools, which are incredibly effective, also really overcomplicate and obscure the real needle movers. The real needle movers, you know, if we're going to get nerdy, are your offer and your message. Like, how are you putting your stuff together? What's the deliverable? How are you speaking that and articulating that? And then how are you communicating the value in your emails and posts? Like, that's the needle mover.
Yeah.
Right. And if we don't have that, and you know, a lot of times when we are learning a big technique or a whatever, like a big thing, that's like, you spend 5 minutes on it, and then the rest of the time is all the tactic.
Yeah.
But like for us, we take all that time you're spending on the tactic and help you get the offer right, so that you can just like kind of say a few words and have hands raised, you know?
Well, I guarantee that there's people that heard what you just have already said and go like, that sounds really good to me.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Like, it's so much fun. I can't even begin to talk about how, and you know, no methodology is right for everybody. Some people, they want to be on stage, capital O, capital S,
Yeah.
right? I've had people who have heard my message and are like, I don't know what you're doing. And they come in and they're like, nope, I want to do my live events, you know? Or they're just like, webinars my way. It's awesome. There's a zillion ways to do it.
Yeah.
Zillion ways, right?
Yeah.
But if you're the kind of person that just wants to connect deeply with people through your communication, you can do that.
Yeah.
And you can do it in a beautiful, non-smarmy, non-salesy, you know, way. And it's just so much fun because of those connections.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to love to do sales conversations when I would do them, because they're just juicy coaching conversations. And I love to coach, and I love talking to people and coaching them and moving them to, you know, to where their next move is.
Yeah.
And then I also love getting paid for that.
That's right. That's right.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what we do and why I love it so much.
And not just paid, but paid very well. You know, that's the
Paid
big
very
thing.
well. And in an integrity and alignment, there's a lot. I mean, I've seen it all. I'm a tracker. So I like to track the trends and the conversations in the industry. And I can kind of tell you when, you know, launches, people started getting sick of them, and in around 2017, around that time you were talking about, and kind of when this fell out of favor, or this conversation was in the field. And people have had a lot of challenges with high ticket, and high ticket done well is still, in my view, the most transformative, the most awesome. And it has to be done well and in integrity and in alignment and all the things. And that's what we aim to help people do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. So now that people have a good idea of who you are and what really inspires you, and we've got a little bit of that context, that I'm going to switch gears here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. So, Elizabeth, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah. Well, yes, of course I do.
You wouldn't have said yes to this if that weren't.
I know. I have so many, and I know this is what everyone probably says, right? How can you narrow it down? And I could never make it one person. Like, that would just be impossible. But there's the turning points, right? And for me, the turning points, I mean, for me, and I think what was I saying a minute or two ago or whatever, like, relationships are my edge. There's no question about it. Like, growing up, I'm very energetically sensitive. Like, I've got the squishy empath thing going on. So, and I attract really strong personalities with my strong personality. So I often would shut people out because I was like, oh my goodness, it's too much, right? You know, when I was a child. And so I, you know, there was a period of time where I would put up a lot of walls, right? And part of what my transformation has been in, you know, in the entrepreneurial space and just in the personal growth space has been around really being able to connect with people in a different way and in a deeper way. So I will say, so so in part because of that, a big piece of when I look back at my whole trajectory, the people that really stand out, the people where it's like, wow, this was the fork in the road. This was a fork in the road. This was a fork in the road. Like almost with the exception of maybe my husband, well, not maybe, with my exception of my husband, because there's a whole story with that, right?
Oh,
There's a mentor there. There's a mentor there. There's some kind of teacher, mentor, someone who saw in me something that I didn't see in myself, and or sparked in me something I didn't know was there, some kind of clarity. So I have always, as a result, and I'll talk about some specific ones as we go. Like I'm happy to share some of those turning point people, right? But I have always talked about the importance of mentorship and the importance as well, especially those of you who are teaching online, those of you who are teaching your expertise and your knowledge and your wisdom. Either you're doing that in a course or you're doing that in more like what our people do, which is, sit down and do transformational work with folks. And sometimes those things overlap, right? But it's so, so important to know what your lineage is and who those mentors are, and be able to trace the threads of how you learned from who and kind of what led you to where you are. So when I think about the relationships and those turning points, I really see this like big long line back to the beginning of my origin story, right? In this particular lifetime, and the people that have brought me here, right? And I just, I'll also speak into this as well. Like it's so, first of all, there's so much you can do with that. I used to say back when I first got started, because there was a time when I wasn't teaching marketing, right? There was a time where I thought I was going to be a comics writer, and I thought I was going to be a fiction writer. And that's a whole other interesting little story in itself. Right. But there was a time when I didn't know how to do what I do now. I had no clue. And yet I was taking metaphysical teachers like tarot readers and astrologers who were in my world at the time, who were making $1,000. And very quickly, I was helping them make $4,000 and $5,000 a month.
okay.
Quadrupling and 5xing their revenue, which is not hard to do when you're starting out with $1,000 a month, right? And this was in 2007. But people are like, Elizabeth, how are you doing this? You've never built a successful business, which was true. In a way, if I had let that, wiggly boo get in my way, I'd be like, I've got no business teaching anyone anything.
Right.
But I was like, wait a minute, marketing has a lineage. Like these direct response dudes that I'm learning from right now, there's a whole lineage of direct response that spans way back before these guys. And the principles are rooted in things that have been here forever and ever. So I can lean on kind of the shoulders of giants and feel very confident, because what I get to do is, as you so beautifully put it before we turn the recording on, is like just be the channel and the keeper of the wisdom and help, and actually get in there and help people. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. So I see all these kind of turning point mentors as this lineage. And I've always been really just aware of crediting them as I go and speaking about that aspect of my journey, because, I'm pretty brilliant. I'll say that. Like I'm really, really friggin' good at what I do. Like I'm really good at it. Right. But it just didn't spring fully formed from my head. And I'd like to see more. I think to me, part of the one small piece of the whole relationship milieu of entrepreneurship is understanding where your thought leadership comes from, and you having an understanding of that and transmitting as best you can that, in addition to what you're doing. That makes sense. Totally. So I actually, if you go to my website, if you go to sevenfiguregoddess.com and you go to the about me or whatever we've got up on the top of the website, there's a page there with my lineage, and it's got all the people. It's a little long. I got to tighten it up a little bit. Right. But it name checks all the important, those real turning point people, so people know where I'm coming from, and kind of like the energetic threads that they're stepping into when they work with us.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so Who are some
Yeah.
of those people that you just feel led to talk about here for this conversation?
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about that. And I'm gonna, so there were a couple. I'm just gonna sort of use my entrepreneurial journey.
Okay,
I'll kind of start at that point forward. And my entrepreneurial journey started in 2007.
okay.
I quit my job in January of 2007. It was like, I remember having
A
to
big
file a
jump.
tax. Yeah, having to file the tax, like two tax, which like there was like, I had to do like, the taxes for my employment. And then, I just remember that. And it was only like 2 weeks. Anyway. And there were a lot of people, so I'll just kind of start there. And when I started, I had no idea what I was getting into. I don't know if you remember this or you've talked to people with this experience, but I was coming out of a job, and I was very successful in the job. I was very successful, as sort of a type A master's in computer science. I had a 6-figure job. And I remember thinking to myself, like, how hard can it be? Do this for myself.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I stepped onto the path and I was like, oh my sweet goodness and gracious, what have I gotten myself into? I got to create my own income now. And I was studying with all the direct response guys. I was studying with all the guys, John Carlton and all those guys I talked about. And through that, and the reason I'm bringing this up is kind of set the stage of the person I'm going to mention. So I found out a lot about myself in those first 2 years. And I discovered that because I got into this thinking I was going to be a writer, thinking I was going to be a fiction writer. I was going to write comics. And then I got on that path, and I actually started writing direct response copy as a way to pay the bills.
Okay.
That's why I started learning about it. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever. Like the internet was just coming online, and I'm like, you guys are telling me that I can send some email and have people pay me and kind of cut out the middleman. Where do I sign? Right. And then I realized that copywriting and entrepreneurship is so closely tied to creating your reality. And all of my magical background, all of my background around manifesting, it was all like, holy smokes, this stuff. Right. But I had to go through this process of like, well, what is it I really, really want to do? And that process led me to the first real big turning point person. Like all the peeps I learned from up until then, like there's the layers. Like I had my first magical teachers, and I had the first direct response copy guys, and of course all the people that I interacted with in my schooling and everything. There came a point though, and it was about 18 months in, where I had to kind of pick a lane,
Okay.
right? Decide what I was going to do. So, Elizabeth, are you going to be a copywriter for hire? No. Elizabeth, are you going to try to write courses on stuff and sell them? And I remember thinking to myself, even though I was in my mid 30s, I was like, what on earth would I write a course about? Like, oh my goodness, I don't feel like the expert in anything except maybe some of this magic-y stuff, but I can't sell that. I can't talk about that publicly like back then. And then I was like, there's something here. There's something else that I'm supposed to be doing. And what I discovered was that thing was coaching.
Okay. Okay.
Coaching. And I had to make a choice. There came a point where, so this is a little hope, maybe this is a little piece of wisdom for peeps, little back piece of wisdom on the mentorship tip and on the, getting traction in your business, right? There comes a point where you got to decide what you're doing. And my strategy has always been to find one person that you're going to align with and really, really learn from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Because up until that time, I've been mentor hopping and I've been learning from these people here and this people here. But I was like, all right, I have to make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up, this was in 2008. And I ended up narrowing it down to 3 different people, all of whom I ended up learning from. But one of those people, I was like, I'm going deep and I'm going to figure out what this person has created, and I'm going to get the skills that I need. That makes sense?
Yep.
And so that person was a woman named Kendall Summerhawk.
Okay.
I don't know if you know Kendall. Kendall is a master coach trainer and a master coach. And I remember when I was learning when I was figuring out what I wanted to do, I'm like, it's coaching, right? Because I don't want to sit in my house all day and try to write stories from my head without any input. Like I realized, I'm like, I need to talk to people. I can't just sit here and be a writer and be in my head all the time. That will drive me nuts. And that was a huge realization, and kind of hard because I spent 5 years kind of doing the writer thing. And I'm like, wait a minute, this thing called coaching is, an offshoot, an offspring of therapy, or like it's a, different lensing, right? And be careful there. It's not therapy, right? But I would see her and some other coaches and the way that they would transform people in like 5 minutes and just completely create these breakthroughs in no time whatsoever.
Wow.
By sitting with them in this heart-to-heart connection and asking questions. And I was like, that's what I want to do. That's what I know, this is part of it. And, further along, I figured out that I'm here to teach transformational leaders how to make a lot of money to help shift consciousness on the planet. That was like part of the mission. But I just remember going, okay, I am going to say yes to the invitation. And I was in her first certification class. And it was in 2009. And it's kind of like, for a few years there, it was the stuff of legend, right? Like now it's sort of like us old guard, we're really in the rearview mirror now, I feel, in some ways, with the Insta and and the TikTok and all the things. And there are so many incredible, really young people online and doing incredible things, right? But at the time, her coaching certification was just like off the chicken. And it was an off the chicken experience for me.
Okay.
To really get the skills. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the way that I did it, and of course I had a really strong relationship with her for a really long time, which was, she was the mentor for many years, and I still credit her to this day, so, but it was like, I got into that world, I got into her world, and I really set myself on, all right, I'm going to figure out how to help people have the breakthroughs. And so I was in her certificate. It was the first time she'd ever done it. So she was finding her way teaching it. You know what I mean? Like the first time you do anything. But I used to sit and just listen to her on calls. And of course, I was in the you had a relationship with her. I was in the receiving seat. I would get coached and all of that. Right. But I would listen to how she was able to ask questions and just open people up, and also really see them for what they were. She and I have not been connected for a long time. And yet her way the way back then that she really held the relationship was like, I'm going to see in this person what they can't see in themselves. I am going to hold my clients as powerful, as powerful as they really are.
Yeah.
And as powerful as who this person really is, not the stories in their head, not the thing they think is possible. I'm going to be the one. And that's our job as coaches and mentors, is to hold people as powerful no matter what. And it was the first time that anyone had ever put that to me. And of course, I came from, not feeling held powerfully, not feeling like people saw me, not feeling like I had anyone holding me in that way. And my husband was the first person who really held me in that way. Right. And I saw what a game changer it was. And the question is, what's a person that's completely changed the trajectory? That changed the trajectory.
Yeah.
Because when I was like, that's the, like, not only because I wanted to learn all the skills, you know what I mean? Like I wanted to learn the magic questions.
Just give me the list.
I know. Well, I mean, I love from a manifesting standpoint, my favorite kind of magical tool, if you will, is perception
Mhm.
and shifting people's lensing. Because when we set the frame differently, oh my goodness, here's all the other possibilities, right?
Yeah.
And she was beautiful. So I wanted to learn how to do that when I was actually talking to someone. And what I didn't know when I started working with Kendall is that I wanted to be the kind of person who is just going to be so firm in her belief in her clients, so firm in her belief of, yes, this is possible, and there is no way you can tell me it's not happening.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that Kendall used to do. She had a phrase, and I still use it: there's no way you can convince me.
Mhm.
She used to say, she'd be like, Elizabeth, there's no way you can convince me that you can't. You know?
Yeah.
And that really opened up everything else.
Yeah.
Because not only did I have this incredibly valuable skill set, and she was my first coach mentor, definitely not the last. From there, I wanted to learn how to do all the transformation-y stuff. I wanted to know how to do the NLP and the hypnosis, and I wanted to know to actually rewire people's brains and like all that good stuff that really helps people. Right. So I learned a bunch of that as well. But it was in that container, just the frame of
Yeah.
no matter what,
Yeah.
decision, no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, I've never been the same since. And I'm proud to say, there's a lot of things that I've changed over the years, but that's I often joke that like the secret sauce is I just sit there and tell people, you can create your offer. You can do it. You can figure out how to map the magic. We can figure out how to get paid for it. There's no way for you you're going to convince me otherwise. And you can absolutely do it. And that's, I think, part of what people come into our containers for. And that I would not have that in the same way were it not for Kendall.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That, on another hand, I feel like, man, Elizabeth, you're talking right to me right now. And I'm just like taking all this in, going, you know what? There's a couple people in my life I need to communicate with just a little bit differently. And if they knew, if like, I'm just like, because I do feel that way about them. And I'm thinking of one individual yesterday that I just spoke with, and I'm like, they've been on my mind, and
Yeah.
I want to reach back out to them, and I've just been letting it percolate because
Yeah.
I want to reach back out to them. I'm not sure exactly what I want to say to them, but I know I do, and I'm just going to percolate on this a little bit. And now here you are having this conversation, and I'm like, that's it right there. That's what I want to share with them, you know. So
Yeah.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for that, because man,
You're
I
so
just I've had these experiences a lot where it's like I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just gonna percolate and sit on this, but the right thing is going to come up.
right. Is the catalyst. Yeah.
You just totally delivered that for me personally right now, and I just want to thank you for that. And
You're so welcome. And
and
I'm just in so much appreciation for that. I appreciate having this conversation because I don't often think of that time in my life anymore. And it was so hard. I had so little confidence in myself at that time. Everything I was doing was so clunky. And it just felt like it wasn't quite me yet. Like, it's taken me, for anyone who's listening, who's been on this path for a while, it feels like it's taking you a while to kind of find your thing and find your groove. I can totally relate to that. you know
yeah,
and and yet I'm so grateful for that time, because and having Kendall, and having that, and the people who are in Kendall's world by extension, holding that space, because it was so powerful and so transformative. And it was one of those, like, you know what, I'm not the same person anymore,
yeah, yeah,
and I'm going in a different direction as a result, right? Because I had to let go of my old identity as, I'm going to be a comics writer. I'm going to write, fiction for young adults, fantasy fiction for young adults. Like, that's what I thought. And I had amazing relationships in that realm. I was in New York City, and I knew all the comics guys. On the fiction front, I was being mentored by people who wrote the books on my bookshelf when I was growing up. I mean, it was like wow. Right. Like just, having the person whose book whose anthology, she was an editor, Terry Winling, sitting you down in a coffee shop going, your apprenticeship is over. Right. It was very hard for me. She's huge, just amazing. And she invented urban fantasy and like all this. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. It was very, very hard at that point in my life to listen to what was true for me. And what was true for me was, you want to be a coach. You want to be a coach. And this whole showing people how to make big amounts of money is like the thing for you. And then later, that very quickly turned into offers and messaging. That's always been my specialty, even when I was, working back then. And none of that was what I thought I'd be doing.
Yeah.
And so it was very messy, and it was very like, I was very like insecure, and I had all my money stuff too, right? All the money stuff and like worthiness and can I do it and can I get paid? So to have, a leader, true leader, and a mentor and a teacher who would hold that space, not just for me, but just as a part of the frame for everybody and as a core part of the energetic field.
Yeah. 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 If you think about this relationship with you and Kendall, and you look back over this, I'm sure you can come up with a lot of examples for this question, but I just want you to, I'm just going to set the intention you're going to come up with one example.
The perfect one. Yeah.
So if you look at this relationship with you and Kendall and all that has transpired since then, what is one example of where, and you don't have to necessarily name names or anything, but like, what is one example where you got to make a really big impact, and hands down, that would have never happened if not for your relationship with Kendall?
Yeah. It's a really great question. Yeah. And of course, there are lots of examples. And again, as I said, there's so many things that have changed since then. And, I come from a whole different perspective now in terms of what I teach and what I do and how I do it. But there are certain elements of how I coach that are still just like, again, that certainty and decision, all that. So the impact has continued to ripple forever and ever and ever. Right. But I would say my first live event. So I did back in the day in 2012, right? Because back at that time, so I got into Kendall's world in 2008, did her certification in 2009. At that time, it was live events or nothing. Like that was kind of the way.
Yeah.
And it's just where we were in our evolution. Like no judgment, no shade. But I remember just being like, oh my goodness, like I don't want to freaking do live events. But I did want to have the impact. And I did want to have, I wanted to do my work, and I wanted to do my work in a big way. Right. And so I said yes to doing the live event, and I went off and got trained. This is another turning point moment to sell from stage. Because I was like, there's no way that I'm freaking gonna put a live event on, because at that time, really expensive too. And yet the cash you had to just like manage like a hawk. I'm like, there's no way that I'm going to do that without setting foot with like knowing exactly how to sell from stage in a really authentic and integrity way. And I was filling my first kind of big group program, and I'd filled it before. It wasn't the first time I'd run it or whatever, but I wanted to put like, gosh, I don't know, 30 or 40 people into Goddess Business School, which was the name of the program. And Goddess Business School ended up being a multi-million-dollar revenue stream. We put at least 200 people through it over the course of a few years. Like it was really, and people to this day, I have people coming up to me and they're like, do I still have access to the content? Like Kaylee, our ops goddess, like just unlocked someone, like she brought it back online for somebody. I don't know, somebody bought it. And it was like, I mean, I wanted to do that. And it was Kendall who helped me say yes to doing the event. It was Kendall who helped me plan the event. And, she was my mentor through it. And I remember she also gave me the story. She gave me kind of the lead in and the angle, I guess you could say, or topic for my offer around answering the call, which is very much about what I'm very mission driven, if it's not leaping the obvious.
Yeah.
you know, and I mean, people just flocked. I can't remember how many people we enrolled into that program.
Yeah.
But it was a lot. It was a lot. And there's no way I would have had the courage to do it, to lead the live event in the way that I did and to go through it. I was terrified. If it were not for someone in my corner going, there's no way you can convince me.
Yep. Yeah.
No way you can convince me, and
Yeah.
then showing me, and so again, huge ripple effect, because a lot of those people are still in our world. They, Goddess Business School was a really great program. And, people took what was in there and started getting clients of their own and making the money they wanted to and everything. So, yeah.
Wow. Wow. And what's my experience, because of who we serve, not only do we get to have this transformational experience, with the direct front people that we serve, the clients, the partners that we serve.
Yeah.
But, we look at the impact that comes from that, because it shifts the relationship with everybody else in their life. Not, so their spouses, their team, their vendors, their clients, the live and all those lives that are also involved in the clients that they serve, their clients' spouses, their clients' children, their clients' team members and vendors, and what's really come up from hosting this podcast over the last couple of years is that the real impact, the real ripple effect of the work that we do, most of us don't really think about, but yet when we start looking at it, we're like, wow, you know what? I don't know exactly how big it is, but this is really big. This is really big.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
it's just why I do it.
Yeah.
I am addicted. I'll use that word. That's strong language. I don't mean it to use it flippantly or be triggering or anything, but it's really, I always say to our clients, I'm in it for the breakthroughs. I'm in it for the breakthroughs. And that, I would say, that comes from Kendall too, has her oranges. Cause she used to be like, she used to talk about like coaching someone to a breakthrough. And she was like, I'm always after the breakthrough when I'm coaching. I'm always after the breakthrough. And, the breakthrough being the new awareness, they're like, oh, that like creates more possibilities, puts more possibilities on the menu. And then you can take action on the one that you're meant to. Right. And, doing that for the people that we serve is like, oh, enough. But if you really sit down and look at the ripple effect, it's just off the chicken.
Yeah.
Like, if I look at someone like yourself, who is such a connector, because like, what you do, putting people together and bringing people together, it's almost like the highest leverage form of magic possible, right? Because when people come together, a third thing happens.
Yeah.
And then there's all that ripples out from that, and bringing the two people together that are at the level, two people together who are often at the levels, the people that you play at, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's boggling. It's mind boggling. And it also is just like, you know what? This is why when I get up in the morning and sometimes I'm like, oh my goodness, XYZ is waiting for me, or, oh my goodness, I've got this headache to deal with, or, oh my goodness, I've got this person's angry, whatever, because I take all that in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It pales in comparison to
my
breakthroughs.
friend Vinny, So, and I think I heard Garth Brooks talk about this too in that documentary he did a couple of years ago on Netflix. He's like talking about the blessing and the curse. Everything is both a blessing and a curse. And I know my buddy Vinny talks about that. That um, and the curse part of it is like, well, I know for me is
Yeah.
I just have, like, I look at like with what I shared, this person that I want to reach back out to, I I just love them so much, and I want the best for them,
Yeah.
and I sometimes, it's like not easy to say what we feel we want, what we feel needs to be said, and
Yeah.
and we look for the
100%.
best way to say that and stuff, and come from this place of that they know that I'm sharing this with them because I love them so much,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and you know the, I wouldn't change anything of the stuff that goes on in my life, and it's not
Yeah.
always easy, but I'll tell you, it's so incredibly rewarding and fulfilling, and I feel as far as we've come, we've just barely scratched the surface, and I've got so much more growth to go through, and I'll get to make an even that much bigger impact because of it, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And it just, you know, I guess I know what you're talking about too. Like that was another thing Kendall Good was really good at, was delivering the truth with love, which is a skill, right? Real important skill for coaches.
yeah,
Um, relationships makes it all better,
yeah,
right? Like we can get through all of that, any rough stuff that we've got in our field. I was just thinking about this the other day. Like, I swear to goodness, like just 2 days ago, I was really, maybe it was because I was thinking about this and what I wanted to share and who I wanted to talk about. But I was just even like taking a little like mini inventory of like, the peeps in my inbox right now and my relationships with them, like my messenger box,
mm,
right? There's three of my dear friends who all of them have been clients at one point or another. I've been clients of theirs, right? And we have a little nickname for ourselves, the Queen's Posse. And we just like, pass messages back and forth. We're all in different parts of the country and we pass messages back and forth and we stay connected. And sometimes we're more quiet and sometimes, but I was like, I just am so grateful for each of them.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm grateful for Travis and I'm grateful for like, the Mojo Mastermind. And I'm great. My team, like, I don't even get me started on the beautiful humans that I have on my team now who have helped me immeasurably become a better leader and have very patiently, past and present, by the way, not just the people that are currently on my team, but people, especially in the past,
yeah,
3 years they've been on my team. It's like they've all been just like, wow, I'm so blessed to get to hang out with them
yeah,
and
yeah,
connect with them and serve them and provide opportunities to them. And then, of course, they're constantly providing opportunities back to me.
yeah,
It's like, man, it's something that in that moment, the moment a couple days ago, I was like, Elizabeth, you have got, when the next time you're feeling stretched or you're feeling grumpy or you have a difficult situation with someone, because I'm really affected by the difficult stuff, right? The like someone's unhappy or someone's having like, it's been, my growth as a coach has been very much about how do I be with that and really be with it, and be the leader for them, right? The people have been leaders for me. But like anytime that we have any of these kind of bumps along the path, right? I'm like, Elizabeth, you've got to remember the people,
yeah,
because whatever this little thing is in this now moment, you're surrounded by an army of people that have had a huge impact and that you get to impact.
yeah,
Still in that moment, and again, maybe it's because I was prepping for this. It was just a whole different, like, yeah, I'm going to call faces to mind next time I'm feeling grumpy. I'm going to call Hallie up in my consciousness. I'm going to call Marianne up in my world. I'm going to call, Travis in my head, and like Peeps in Travis's mastermind. Dan is doing awesome right now. Tony, right? It's just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So thank you for having these conversations, and
Well,
thank you for
thank
inviting me to
you. Thank you.
nerd out on this a little
So
bit.
for anybody listening to this, Elizabeth, it is just like, man, Kev, I really like Elizabeth. I love the way she shows up. How can they find out more about you and the work that you guys are doing and stuff?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm really easy to find. um, so our website, you can, first of all, it's easy to find my company, Seven Figure Goddess. It's at sevenfiguregoddess.com. And right now that'll redirect you to femininemagic.com. I
Okay.
got two sides of the business. I've got the business pieces and I've got the metaphysical teachings, and like they've been out in front in different times. Like I'll have the
Okay.
business out in front for a while, and then I'll really double down on the metaphysical teachings to really learn that. And then now we're really clear that we got to lead with the business piece. So if
Okay.
you go to sevenfiguregoddess.com, it'll take you to femininemagic.com, or you can just go to femininemagic.com. That's our website. Everything's there. And then also I would just invite, if anyone wants kind of more, if anything I said on the business side or the spiritual side sparked anything for you, I would invite you to download my book, which is at sevenfiguregoddessbook.com.
Okay.
And it's really powerful. It's the energetics of making the leap from 6 to 7 figures in 2 years or less.
Very
It's a
good.
really potent series. It's a potent system for how to actually show up as a 7-figure transformational leader. And it's super useful for anyone who's not even in transformational leadership. So
Awesome.
that's a great one. And you can just download it free. It's available on Amazon. You can go get it, but you can download it for free at sevenfiguregoddessbook.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Elizabeth, any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
Yeah. I would just invite everyone, and I know anyone listening to this is already gets it if they're listening to a podcast called Million Dollar Relationships. But one of the things I find really, really important to remember is that one of the many reasons why relationships are everything is because relationships are the conduit through which the divine works, right? Everything comes from source to you through other humans. And that is just like, whoa, right? So I would just invite you to know, to remember that, and to even be open to receiving even more from the relationships in your life, and to giving more in the relationships in your life as well, and to find even more empowering, more leveraged ways to create an even bigger impact through your relationships.
I love that. I love that. And you know, if anything, I know, most entrepreneurs that I've worked with and interacted with over the years, the majority of them, they're just these really amazing, giving, generous people. And if anything, and I know, man, I used to include myself in this, is we can all use to expand our wings a little bit, spread our wings a little bit more when it comes to receiving, and open ourselves up to that a little bit more. And that's huge. And I have been actively and intentionally working on that for 12 years now. And
Oh yeah, it's always a journey. I've been working on it myself.
yeah. And so, and
Yeah.
I will tell you that, when you place an intention of like, okay, I'm going to start looking at this in my own life, and I am going to start intentionally spreading my wings a little bit more, expanding my receiving muscle, I will tell you, you will be absolutely blown away by what will transpire. And yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Beautiful.
well, Elizabeth, thanks so much again. Thanks so much for having this conversation. I just really appreciate it. I am excited to share this interview with so many other people. So thank you.
Thank you. Oh my goodness.